Hey everyone, Michael here today. So in this video, I want to talk about the idea of whether the elites or the controllers at the very top of society are actually trying to deprive the general public of advanced game-changing technology that could change the world. And the reason why I've been thinking about this a lot lately is because back when I was a kid growing up in the 90s, I just assumed that by the time we hit 2025, that everyone would be driving around these amazing flying cars. Energy would be cheap or free. We'd be living in these amazing buildings, and we basically have the world at our fingertips. But then when you actually do fast forward to 2025, you kind of see the opposite. We're still driving around gas powered cars. Everyone's still using oil and fossil fuels. And somehow, most of our food supply is 10 times more toxic than what our parents and grandparents ate. So it makes you wonder what the heck gives? What's going on, right? I've done hours of research into this. And the common trend that I would see is that whenever there be some sort of inventor or researcher with good intentions come out with some amazing discovery or invention, something would happen to either suppress that person's work or the person dies in a quote accident so that the technology or breakthrough never reaches the public. And some good examples of this is if we rewind back to 1949, there's a Japanese car company called Tama. They came out with a rechargeable truck that could run 200 kilometers on a single charge, right? And again, this is back in 1949. But then when you fast forward to 2013, when Elon Musk came out with the Tesla vehicle that could run hundreds of miles on a single charge, it kind of makes you wonder, like, wow, we had this technology for decades already, but somehow when Elon Musk came out with it, it was considered groundbreaking when it actually wasn't. So what seems to be happening from what I can see is that we've had pretty advanced level technology, but somehow it gets buried, suppressed, and everyone forgets about it until it gets rediscovered on some level. And another great example of this happening is with the famous inventor named Stanley Meyer back in the 80s, who came out with a water engine. And what he figured out how to do was that he figured out how to power an entire vehicle using water by using the process of electrolysis to break the hydrogen bonds from oxygen in order to harness hydrogen energy to run the car, basically. And supposedly you can actually drive the car for hundreds of miles on a single take of water. Now, you could probably guess that the oil industry probably wasn't very happy to hear about this. And so at some point, Stanley Meyer did die in a fairly tragic food poisoning accident. And again, there are many examples of a similar incident happening over and over again among other inventors who wanted to bring something amazing to the world. So the real question is, why does this keep happening over and over and over again? I mean, and second of all, who's responsible, right? I mean, shouldn't the government and the corporations be trying to help the people? And my short answer to that is no. Because if you're disrupting large, well-established legacy industries like oil, big pharma, etc., there's way too much money at stake to allow these inventors and researchers to come out and change the world and improve human life. Because again, the whole motto of these controllers at the very top is that human suffering is really, really good business. So why not just keep it going for as long as possible? So that's essentially what's going on over here. And I've countless examples, like I said before, of this being the case. So if we look at the oil industry and the energy crisis, or the quote energy crisis that we're dealing with right now, all of it's completely manufactured, right? Like, again, everyone's saying we're going through an energy crisis. There is enough energy. Everything's so expensive, blah, blah, blah. And again, based on the research I've done, I'm absolutely convinced that all the scarcity that we're going through right now is completely engineered into our society in order to keep society and the people in an easily controllable state, right? If you go back to Nikola Tesla, he attempted to build a wireless energy transmission tower on Wardenclyffe Tower. And his intention was to be able to transmit energy through the ether vacuum to the entire population for free. And as you can guess, he got completely defunded by JP Morgan because where's the profitability if everyone can just get free energy, right? And they're playing other researchers, inventors in the free energy space. Dr. John Searle is another great example who figured out how to create a rotating series of magnets that self-sustains itself to create like a continuous stream of energy without any output being required. There are also plenty of other individuals that came out with various different designs for permanent magnet motors that run itself. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, hydrogen energy is also another a big potential opportunity that could completely replace oil and fossil fuels. But every single time someone comes out with a free energy engine, somehow someone puts the kibosh on it to the point that it doesn't reach the public, essentially. Now, if we look in the medical industry, like the cancer industry, for example, there has been many, many cheap, effective treatments and cures for cancer that have been available for decades, such as natural remedies or other frequency-based devices. But every time someone tries to bring this to the public, it gets shut down over and over and over again. Another great example is Dr. Royal Raymond Rife, who is famous for building a device that is able to transmit frequencies to the affected area of the body in order to cure of any illness. Wilhelm Reich was also another prominent inventor and researcher in the space, where he figured out how to harness orgone energy through an orgone energy accumulator in order to heal people of a number of different afflictions. And another famous example is a man named Robert Becker, who did a lot of really groundbreaking research in the use of electromedicine or electrotherapy to regenerate lost limbs, as well as speed up recovery times for potential bone breaks and bone injuries. And as you can guess, what all these different devices inventors have in common is that they pose a massive threat to the medical industry, right? Because if people can recover and heal from their illnesses on a very cheap and effective basis, then there's no room for people to buy like overpriced treatments that are going to keep them sick, right? Because it doesn't work very well with the business model. And another great example of a suppressed inventor is T. Townsend Brown, who was famous for putting together and pioneering an electrogravitic propulsion system. And what this essentially is that it's an alternate propulsion system that allows you to completely violate the laws of gravity by using propulsion that generates a gravitational field bubble that allows you to violate Newtonian laws in movement. But basically, if uh, had electrogravitic propulsion been allowed to be used by the mainstream, this would have made transportation way, way cheaper and way faster as well too. But again, if people have access to this type of technology, then they'll be very difficult to control. And so that's largely why a lot of these inventors' research have been so heavily suppressed throughout the decades. Another thing I also want to mention too is that when you look at many science journals and academic institutions, they're very dogmatic and biased against anything that might conflict with legacy physics concepts. For example, um, if you look at many of the free energy type devices that have been proven to work, they're based on the idea of the ether, the idea that we're surrounded by this sea of energy in the vacuum that's all around us at all times. But if you look at the Michelson-Morley experiment, that was basically used and interpreted to prove that there is no ether in our reality. But the truth is that the results of that experiment was actually misinterpreted, and what it actually indicated was that there was no, quote, ether wind. But in the follow-up experiment done by the same group, it was actually proven that the ether does exist. But again, the mainstream science community or the physics community does not recognize the ether as a real thing, even though there's a lot of evidence that it does in fact exist. So anything that violates an old legacy physics concept is generally going to be disregarded, almost in like a religious dogmatic fashion. That's not the way science is supposed to work. And in addition, if you look at a lot of famous science journals, I think I saw a study once done by this British journal called Nature, and they did a survey where 1 in 3 U.S. scientists, in an anonymous survey, admitted to breaking some sort of integrity regulation in their research. And this involved potentially lying or fabricating data in order to fit a specific agenda from a particular sponsor. So lying in scientific reports is a very common thing. And unfortunately, we live in a world today where science is essentially weaponized against the people in order to serve specific agendas. So what does this mean for you, basically? So what this means for the basic average normal person is that we live in a world where we're operating on less than half the potential that we're capable of, right? Just imagine if we live in a world where energy is free and we're driving around these electrogravitic cars that can get us to where we need to go really quickly and really cheap, right? And if we're able to produce our own energy at our own homes, we'll be able to live in a very empowered, independent state where we're no longer dependent on the government to give us what we need. But when society is forced to depend on oil, or when society is forced to overpay for pretty much all their products as well as their medical care, it keeps people in a low state where they're easily controlled and manipulated. So that's the world we're living in right now. And the unfortunate thing is that the average person is not even aware that they're being deprived of high level technology that could change their lives and make everyone's life better. And so that's really the purpose of this channel. I really want to bring forth secret knowledge around health and technology that's little known to the public so we can really work together to create a movement to bring this stuff forward. So that's it for today's video, guys. Hope you enjoyed that and hope you guys have a great day. See ya.